G'day everyone and welcome back to another deck profile. Welcome back to another budget deck profile. If this is the first time seeing one of our budget profiles, basically what we do for them is we grab the most recent starter deck, in this case starter deck 12, Zoro and Sanji. We get two of them and combine them together, and this is basically the optimized list from those cards that we have available. Now if you guys do want to see a fully optimized build for Zoro and Sanji, so a deck that's made up of all the cards that we have available to us, let us know in the comment section down below. We'll try and get one out. Typically we won't release deck profiles on the channel if we're not kind of happy with the build, haven't had some good success with our play testing, but we'll definitely endeavor to try and get an optimized version of Zoro and Sanji out there. All right, let's take a look at Zoro and Sanji for those that haven't seen it before. Dual color leader, green and blue, 5,000 power, starts with 4 life. The effect is Don times 1 when attacking once per turn. You may return one of your characters at the cost of 2 or more to your hand. Then you can set one of your characters with 7,000 power or less as active. So that 7,000 power is not just base power, so not the printed power, but if something's buffed by Don above that 7,000, you can't restand it. So you just got to keep that in mind when playing. So inherently with that restand effect, we can be fairly aggressive with this deck, and there's a few cards in this deck that can actually restand a character for a third time in a turn, which is really nice for us. And if you stick around towards the end of the video, we'll go over some turn 1, turn 2 plays and some combos that will be handy to know for the deck. Alright, first of all, we're going to look at some of the cards that get some really good effects when attacking or activate main that we can use multiple times with our leader's ability. The first one is a really nice one, which is the blue Sanji, costs you 2, 3,000 body, no counter. The effect is Don times 1 when attacking, which is not once per turn. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand, this character gains 2,000 power until the start of your next turn. So if you have a Don underneath Sanji, he's 4,000 power. Use his effect. If you have 5 or less, go to 6,000 power, and then you can restand him with Zoro Sanji's effect and then go to 8,000 power. It'll drop down to 7,000 power for your opponent's turn, but that's really nice, half your opponent to deal with for only 2 Don. The next one that we're running a full play set of the Zoro, the 2 mascots of the deck going back to back here. We got the 4 cost 6,000 body, no counter, Don times 1 when attacking. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 6 or less. Absolutely wild. That's going to rest a lot of things out in this meta, especially resting most of the blockers out there, which is absolutely wild. The only thing that the Zoro is not really going to touch is kind of like the boss characters of most decks. And the yellow does have a lot of characters that are above that 6 cost or less threshold as well, so just keep that in mind when going up against them. But things like your black, running a lot of characters with a cost of 6 or less, so it's really good into them outside of their boss characters. Zoro can be restood with the leader's ability, but there's also another card in this deck which can allow Zoro to restand again. So Zoro is the main character that you can get that 3 attacks off in a turn. Next up we have a full playset of Kuina. 3 cost, 2,000 body, 1,000 counter, activate main. You can rest this character, rest one of your opponent's characters at the cost of 4 or less. So not a when attacking, but this is activate main. So you can trigger this twice with Zoro and Sanji's effect, resting 4 cost or less, is resting a whole bunch of stuff out there, which is really nice. It also has a trigger, which means you can play the card out straight away. Next, we want to have a look at 4 copies of Mihawk. Mihawk costs you 3, 4,000 bodies, a 2,000 counter, already insane card. On play, if you have 2 or less characters, play 1 Muggy Kingdom type or / attribute character with a cost of 4 or less other than Mihawk from your hand rested. So that means when we play out Mihawk, we can play out the Zoro, which we've spoken about. We can play out the Kuina, which we've spoken about as well. The other cards in the deck that we will talk about in a moment that you can also be played out with Mihawk's effect are the Yusaku and Johnny and the Paddy and Khan. One thing you do have to keep in mind when playing out Mihawk is that 2 or less character restriction. So that does include Mihawk when you play him out. So you can basically get Mihawk's effect out if you have 0 or 1 character on the board before you play Mihawk. So you just got to keep that in mind. But your main target playing off Mihawk is the 4 cost Zoro. Next up, continuing with some cool effects for on play and when attacking, is the Ivankov. 3 cost, 4,000 body, 1,000 counter. On play, you look at the top card of your deck. If it's a 2 cost character, you can play it, you don't have to. Otherwise, you can place the revealed character at the top or the bottom of your deck. There are quite a few 2 cost characters in the deck, so most likely you will be able to trigger that first part of the effect. Otherwise, you know what you're going to draw next. If you don't like it, you can put it at the bottom of the deck. The when attacking is once per turn, unfortunately, so you can't use it multiple times with your leader's ability, but you can draw 1 card if you have 6 cards or less in your hand. The next card that kind of has some synergy with Ivankov is Zeph. Zeph is a 5 cost, 5000 body, 1000 counter. On play, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them at the top or the bottom in any order. Then the when attacking, which is not once per turn, so we can use it multiple times. You can reveal the top card of your deck and you can play a character with a cost of 2, rested. Otherwise, you can place that revealed character at the top or the bottom of your deck, similar to that Ivankov effect there. But you should know exactly what's coming up because the turn before you've played Zeph and you know what the next 3 cards that are available to you. So you can get multiple characters out with Zeph and your leader's ability combined. Otherwise, it's just a long-winded way of drawing a card as well. So you can use Zeph's when attacking effect, play out the 2 cost character rested, use your leader's ability, bounce that card that you just played out back to your hand to then restand the Zeph, go again. Next, we look at those characters we spoke about briefly before. We're running a full playset of Yusaku and Johnny, usually 2 cost, 3000 power slash, which means it can be played out by Mihawk with a 1000 counter. The Don times 1 when attacking, not once per turn. You can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less, or you can KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 2 or less. So it does synergize nicely with the Zoro or the Kuina, but there's not a lot of 2 cost characters running around in the meta right now. So basically, Yusaku and Johnny is there to synergize with that Zeph and Ivankov more than anything else. Sometimes you will run into those decks that have those 2 or less cost characters. A lot of the searches, maybe some of the blockers, can be handy to remove them or rest them. Otherwise, it's mainly used as a counter or a way to draw an extra counter. Next up, we are running a full playset of Patty and Khan. So this is a 2 cost 4000 slash character with 1000 power counter, just a vanilla, but can be something you can get multiple swings off with, and is played off that Mihawk effect, which we have mentioned before. Now, moving on to the 2k counters, we already spoke about Mihawk, so we already got 4 there. The next 4 2k counters that we're running Rika. Cost you 2, 0 power. On play, you can rest 2 Don. If your opponent has 3 or more life cards, set one of your slash attribute characters the cost of 4 or less as active. So we can set the Patty and Khan and the Yusaku and Johnny, which we've spoken about, as active. You can also restand your Zoro that allows you to rest. So this is the card that lets you hit 3 swings of Zoro in a turn. It does have to be early game because your opponent has to have 3 or more life cards, but super aggressive with Zoro we can be with Rika. The next 2k counter that we're running a full playset of Pudding. Pudding costs you 2000 power. The active aim is you can return this character to the owner's hand. So if you played off the second play that Zeph gets off from the leader's effects and his effect, you can just bounce it back to your hand. So you're basically drawing 2 cards a turn that use the double Zeph effect there. Otherwise, it's just a cheap card you can play out and then bounce back with your leader to restand one of your other characters. Going on to some more of the defensive kind of cards that we have, running a full playset of the only blocker in the deck, which is the Duval. Cost you 2, 1000 power, 1000 counter. Blocker, the on plays, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and you put them at the top or the bottom in any order. So it helps you order things for your Ivankov or your Zeph, and can help you just make sure you're drawing into the cards that you need. So if you see 3 cards you don't like, they can just go on the bottom of the deck. Moving on to the events, we are running 3 copies of Line Strike. So this is a main aura counter. You rest one of your opponent's characters or leaders with a cost of 4 or less. The trigger, you can activate the main effect there. So yeah, resting something or a leader is really handy for cheap, only 2. And the ability to be able to use it on main or counter is also really good. The last and final card of the deck, we're running 3 copies of Plastic Surgery Shot. Cost you 1, is a counter. You can buff something by 2000 for the battle, then you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character with a cost of 2, you can play it. Otherwise, you can put that at the top or the bottom of your deck. As I mentioned, and as we've seen, we've got a lot of 2-cost characters, which is why we have the Yusaku and Johnny in there instead of something else, just because it synergizes well with this, with the Ivankov and with the Zeph. Alright, here we want to talk about going first, going second, things you should do, shouldn't do, things you want to look for. So typically with this deck, you do probably want to go second, just because you've got a lot of 2-cost characters. You can use your Don a bit more valuably going second, but if you're forced to go first, we'll also talk about some things there. So let's say we are forced to go first here. We're starting with 1 Don. We have no 1 Don plays. So we're only going to make a move on our second turn going first. But typically, if we are going first, we want to try want to try and mulligan for a hand that has Mihawk and Zoro in it, because we can play the Mihawk on our second turn into the Zoro. If we don't see the Mihawk, we would love to see the Ivankov there as well. That helps us look at the top three, make sure we're going to see something like this combination in the next couple of turns. And we can also get some extra draw effects going off there as well. And worst case scenario, as long as we see any kind of 2K, if we don't see any of those, we should be okay. So we can play something out. Ideally, you want to see the Sanji, because there's lots of pressure with Sanji right there. So yeah, when it comes to our second turn on going first, we use our 3-Don, we'll rest them. We'll play our Mihawk, which will then let us play our Zoro out. And depending on your matchup, you probably do want to swing into leader first, so you're not going to run into any kind of triggers. And then when it comes to your next turn, you're going to be getting another 2-Don there. And what you want to do is usually want to attach one to your Mihawk. You're going to be swinging there. Attach another Don to your Zoro, you're going to be swinging there, resting something. You can do that in the other order, as long as you're swinging with the Mihawk first. Depends what your opponent has. If they have a blocker, you probably want to swing with the Zoro first to rest it. You're swinging there, then you're going to attach another Don here under the Zoro. You're going to swing, you're going to bounce back the Mihawk. See how we got 2 Don left over? If we do have a 2-cost character, something like the Sanji or the Duval, anything else there. Duval's pretty nice because you can play it out for that too. Before you swing with your leader, you can look at the top 3 cards, reorder it, and then bounce that one back to your hand with leader's ability. Otherwise, if you do have a Sanji there as well, we want to go for more of an aggressive route. When we swing, we bounce back the Mihawk to our hand. We have that Sanji in hand. Those Dons are still active. And then we will restand the Zoro. We'll swing with the Zoro again. You can attach those 2 Don in there and make that a 9k swing with the Zoro. Otherwise, you can leave it there to play out the Sanji and have another aggressor for your next turn there. So, nice, simple early plays to do going first right there. Now, for going second, what we're going to look for, we still want to look for the Mihawk and the Zoro combination, but we definitely want to see a 2-cost character. Ideally, once again, the Sanji. So when it comes to us going second, so our first turn, we will play out our 2-cost character for our Don there. Pass to our opponent. Hopefully not coming up against Sakazuki. They could probably take that out next turn. But when we come to our next turn, we'll get our extra Don. Now here's where we have a couple options. So we can be nice and aggressive. We can pop the Don under Sanji. We can swing for that 6k. We can then, depending on what our hands is, so if we have the Mihawk and the Zoro combo, we can just play this out here. We can play the Mihawk into the Zoro for our 3 Don. Otherwise, if we have another 2-cost character on board, we can then, instead of playing that out, we can play that 2-cost character. We can get the search of the Duval or whatever else we have going on there. We can attach another Don under the Zoro, Sanji, swing, bounce this back to our hand, and then restand the Sanji and swing again with the Sanji. And Sanji is going to be a 7k body for your opponent's turn. So a little bit easier for you to try and defend there. A little bit more aggro there, and then come your next turn, then you can play out your Mihawk Zoro combo for you. Otherwise, you can be extra patient with it and not even swing with the Sanji. So say if our board looks like this, our hand has this sort of combination in here. What we can do is swing with the leader, depending on what the matchup is. If they got some triggers, they could potentially take out the Sanji. Maybe not, but we can attach one of these Dons here, swing, not using any bouncing effect, and then go into the Mihawk Zoro combo right there. And then come next turn, you can go nice and aggressive. So what that will look like there, so we've got our 6 Don for that turn. Have a Don that'll go under the Sanji. We'll have a Don that'll go for the Zoro. And if we want to swing at the Mihawk, we'll have another Don that will go with there. Obviously, you don't want to attach all those things, but this is just how we're going to be using that Don. Depending on what they have on board, if they have some blockers, we're going to be swinging with the Zoro first to arrest those blockers right there. You can swing with the Sanji as well. Get that buff, swing with the Mihawk. You can pop a Don under the leader. You can swing there depending on what you want to do. If you want to go extra aggressive in terms of getting some nice stronger attacks in there, if you want to rest something else, you restand one of those two. You got 2 Don left to play with, so you can either use that to play out a 2-cost character that you have, or you can attach that to the character that you restood. Obviously the Mihawk will be bounced to your hand because of the effect. And then come next turn, if you have another slash character that can be played off the Mihawk, great. Otherwise, Mihawk's just a great 2k counter to have in hand. Right, for some clarity around some Zeph plays here. So that can be a bit confusing if you just hear it explained to you. So we'll just try and put it in practice. For your, say if you went first, this is your third turn. So if you go second, your third turn as well, you just bet 6 Don. You can play out the Zeph, you rest the 5 Don, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, you reorder them into whatever order you want to have them in. So obviously whichever card's on top is the one that you'll draw, and then you'll play into the other ones as well. So let's say we want to draw into the Sanji, play the Duval, and play the Pudding. So we'll pop that in that order there. When it comes to our next turn, we'll have 7 Don to work with. So we will swing with the Zeph. We can have a Don attached or not. We will swing, we'll reveal the top card. Won't be the Sanji because that's the one we will draw, but we will reveal the next one, which is the Duval. That'll come out rested. You can look at the top 3 again, reorder stuff there if you would like, depending on what other character is there. Then you'll use Zoro Sanji's effect. You can bounce that back to your hand, restand the Zeph. You'll swing with the Zeph again. You'll then bring out the next card, which is the Pudding. And so if Pudding's the last card that you have there, you can also use Pudding's effect to just put this back into your hand. So technically you just drew 2 cards off the Zeph there, and you got 2 attacks in there as well. So that's some clarity around that. It's obviously depending on what cards you see will depend on what your plays will look like. Alright, and there is the deck in all of its glory. Let us know what you think of this budget build. As mentioned before, we'll try and get an optimized build out for you guys there as well. Let us know what other things you want to see profiled for OP06. We're working on a bunch of things, and hopefully going to bring you guys as many deck profiles as we can. But thank you so much for checking out the video. Stay beautiful, and we'll see you all in the next one.